Welcome back. Today is episode 6, where I continue the recruitment phase into part 2. Part 2 is going to be NVA and VC placement segment. As you can see, much like purchasing units in the US order of battle, each unit has a commitment cost. So we have regiments, division HQ, artillery, they each have a commitment cost. And then we can buy replacement points, 3 for 1. We can raise the air defense level. We can declare an offensive. We can improve the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And let me draw your attention to the regiment. Much like the colon that was present on the South Vietnamese units, the number to the right represents an upgraded regiment. So we won't be talking about that immediately. We'll be talking about that in a later video. Just the number to the left. Much like in the previous videos, the NLF record sheet is going to be where most of the action is happening here. You're going to record your ending morale, and then you're going to record your new commitment here, how much commitment the North Vietnamese spend, and then you'll tabulate the ending commitment. The ending commitment cannot exceed morale. That is the only requirement on spending commitment. I also wish to mention that during the pregame setup, you allocated a certain amount of supply that you were going to send by trail and by sea to the Viet Cong. At this point, those expenditures you must cover those expenditures with commitment. One supply, one commitment. If you designated like 6 commitment to go down the trail, then you'd have to spend that 6 commitment now. Okay, so let's say we spent the 3 commitment to put down a North Vietnamese regiment. All North Vietnamese units have to start on the northernmost leg of the trail. So the trail has these multicolored sections, and this is the northernmost section of the trail. Now we're going to discuss the very complicated how to place Viet Cong units. It's complicated because there's 3 different parameters. 1 is population available, 2 is supplies available, and 3 is the region where you want to place them. So let's talk about population first. You'll see the Viet Cong purchases. Like, look at a battalion. Battalion costs 1 personnel and 2 supplies. So we're going to look at the personnel first. So there's a VC battalion costing 1 personnel. On your record sheet, you're going to note that the VC control a certain amount of population in South Vietnam. And then we're going to have a draft level at the beginning of the turn. So the draft level indicates how many people you've used. And this is a one-way direction. This number is only going to go up. And on your current turn, you're going to indicate how many population you use. Now, unlike South Vietnamese purchases, your population use can exceed the controlled population. So if your draft level goes above the controlled population, there's a method for bringing recruits down the trail from North Vietnam. And we're going to go into that on a future video. In the early stages of the game, you're not going to run into this limit. So here is where you record that you've used 1 population. After you've done all your purchases, you're going to have the ending VC draft level, which will likely be below the current population controlled. This will change as the game goes on. There's our VC battalion again. It costs 2 supplies to put him on the map. So we get our supplies from sea and trail. The trail is the Ho Chi Minh Trail, of course. And there's another reservoir, which is the supplies left over from last turn. So any leftover supplies that you did not use are going to go into the ending VC supply pool, as indicated on the bottom of this the display here. And at the beginning of next turn, so anything we had left over after our initial purchase, our pregame purchase, will go into our supply pool. Supply pool can be used anywhere we want. We're also going to have trail supply available and sea supply available. The trail supply available and the sea supply available will be something that has already been determined during the strategic war segment. So if you spend supplies from the supply pool, there's no restriction on where to place your new units in South Vietnam regarding supply. If you're using newly purchased or newly received sea supply that was calculated this turn, you must place it within 5 hexes of a all-water hex. Like so, you just count 5 hexes in. If you're going to place trail supply used, you must place the new unit within 8 hexes of the South Vietnamese border. So the first parameter is population, the second is supplies, and the last is region. So each region has a certain amount of population available. So let's look at Quang Tri, for example. Quang Tri has a total population of 6, and 4 of those are controlled by the South Vietnamese government. So that means that 2 of them are controlled by the National Liberation Front, NLF. So that means we can spend a maximum of 2 supplies inside Quang Tri. 2 is also the minimum. So we could place our 1 battalion in Quang Tri, but no more. But that's not really how we place Viet Cong units. Here's how we really place Viet Cong units. We reach into this cup here, and without looking at the unit, we look at the backside, we place it on the map. Then, after it's placed, we're allowed to look at it and see what it is. But we can't pick the unit and decide where we want it to go. Those regional population rules don't count inside Laos, Cambodia, and North Vietnam. You can build as many as you want on the border and inside Laos and Cambodia and North Vietnam. And now we have the regiment. Regiment is its own animal. You can see a regiment costs 1 personnel and 4 supplies. As an additional requirement, one has to replace 3 battalions with a regiment, in addition to paying those costs. So we'll go into our cup. We purchase 3 battalions, and now we pay the cost. We put our regiment down, hide it so the enemy doesn't see what it is, and that's how you purchase a regiment. An additional requirement is that you can't place VC units or NVA units where there's an enemy unit. So if there was a if there's an ARVN battalion in Quang Tri, for example, you couldn't build your Viet Cong units in Quang Tri. So after you've recorded the impact on the draft level, and after you've recorded the amount of supplies used and carried forward any unspent supplies into the supply pool, the last thing you do during this segment is allocate trail supply and sea supply for the following turns. So you have to decide how many commitment you're going to send down the trail and by sea to turn into VC supplies for next turn. I hope you found this useful. Our next episode will be episode 7, where we discuss the Ho Chi Minh Trail.